Good morning. My name is Corey Reddercup. I am the Director of Policy and Stakeholder Relations at the Burnaby Board of Trade. And we're really pleased to be having this session here today. Before we start, I did want to take a moment to recognize that where I am here in our Metrotown offices, we are on the traditional homelands of the Honklemanum and Squamish-speaking people, and I want to extend appreciation for the chance to do all of our work, including today's meeting on this territory. Today event is a really important topic. Canada is preparing to take in around 40,000 Afghan refugees, and many of those will be coming to settle in Burnaby, the Tri-Cities, and our surrounding communities. So I think it's a timely session today to learn about what's happened so far in that space, what we as a community and a business community can expect next, and maybe some concrete actions and suggestions and ideas that community leaders and business professionals like you on the call can take to help support those resettlement efforts, so that those refugees can land and settle and integrate successfully in our communities here. I'm pleased, as I mentioned, I'm with the Burnaby Board of Trade. I'm pleased to be co-hosting and co-presenting this event with our friends at the Tri-Cities Chamber. I think I saw Leslie on the line there, so welcome, Leslie. And then, of course, Mosaic, who we're thrilled to have presenting the information today. I think my colleagues, I'm going to throw up a slide here. As I do at all of our events, want to recognize these amazing top corporate citizens in Burnaby who support our work throughout the year. I think you'll see their logos on the screen now. But there's a number of organizations in Burnaby that do a ton of work to support what we do as a Board of Trade Chamber of Commerce. So I want to do a quick thank you to them. But I'm pleased to get underway with today's session. As we go through the presentation, if you have questions, please enter those in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screens, and we'll try to save a few minutes at the end to answer those as they come up. I'm sure there might be some interesting discussion or questions that you as attendees might have. We're thrilled today to be joined by a panel of professionals from Mosaic BC. Mosaic's an important partner of the Burnaby Board of Trade, and I know they do a ton of work throughout the community here in Burnaby and across the region. So to introduce our speakers and maybe a little bit more about Mosaic and what they do, I'm pleased to introduce and pass over the floor to Olga Stekova, the CEO of Mosaic. So Olga, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction and the opportunity to engage the members of the Burnaby Board of Trade and the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce to discuss the role that businesses and community leaders can play in responding to the Afghan refugee crisis and supporting the efforts that are underway. I am joining you today from the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and I'm really grateful to be able to live and work on their ancestral land. I would like to start with a few words on why we from Mosaic are speaking to this topic. Mosaic is one of Canada's largest settlement and employment organizations, supporting newcomers with a wide range of services, whether it's the initial information and connections to local resources, English language training, career counseling, upskilling programs, connections to employers, interpretation translation services. Mosaic serves newcomers from over 130 different countries. And regardless of the immigration stream under which they arrived, we work with individuals who are permanent residents, and as well as those who are here on a temporary basis. Mosaic provides services out of about 50 service locations across Lower Mainland, with the highest concentration of services in Burnaby. But we don't only work with newcomers once they arrive in Canada. As one of Canada's major sponsorship agreement holders, we have been endorsed by the Canadian government to support refugees as they apply and come to Canada through the Canada's private sponsorship of refugees program. Mosaic played a critical role during the Syrian refugee crisis and now works alongside the Afghan and wider Canadian community to lead a large-scale private sponsorship response to provide meaningful refugee resettlement and integration support. And we are very encouraged to see the newly re-elected federal government actually increasing the number of Afghan refugees that they plan to resettle to 40,000 over the next few years. We are also very encouraged by Canada having a very strong network of newcomer serving organizations. Mosaic is not the only organization gearing up to supporting Afghan refugees. There are immigrant and social service organizations across Lower Mainland and BC whose services will be invaluable as the refugees arrive and start settling in Burnaby and Tri-Cities. But of course, the collaboration with businesses and the wider community will be crucial for the successful resettlement efforts. So I'm thrilled to be here today with my colleagues, and I'd like to introduce three of them who will be speaking today. Alexandra Dowley is a Mosaic Senior Manager of Refugee Resettlement Integration Programs. She is a national member of the Canadian Council for Refugees, and she manages Mosaic's private refugee sponsorship activities under the sponsorship agreement holder. Malik is originally from Afghanistan. Malik and his wife Jamila own a successful Cook with Lamb restaurant, Jamila's Kitchen and Grill. And they are former refugees and community leaders who have generated national recognition for their generosity, like serving meals to hungry regardless of whether they are able to pay or not. And there's a sign of the restaurant that says, no money, no problem. So thank you, Malik, for being here and for your generosity. And Zarguna Wakil, his Senior Manager, Mosaic Senior Manager for Specialized and Innovative Programs. Zarguna is a former Afghan refugee and is a leader of the Afghan community in Metro Vancouver. So let me turn it over to Alexandra.
Thank you very much, Olga, and hello, everybody. I'm so grateful and excited to be here today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Perfect. So we're so happy to be here today to discuss a little bit about how you can make a positive difference in the lives of Afghan refugees. And again, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the unceded territories where we live, work, and welcome the Coast Salish, the lands of the Coast Salish people, including the shared traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. We'd like to acknowledge that though the histories are distinct, there are similarities between refugees and Indigenous communities in Canada, such as forced displacement, family separation, language and cultural oppression, colonization and marginalization. And we recognize that both newcomer refugee and Indigenous voices must be heard as we take steps towards reconciliation, dignity, belonging, and justice. I'd like to pass the floor to you, Zarguna.
Thank you, Alexandra. Good morning, everyone. I'm also respectfully acknowledging that I'm joining from the traditional and unceded territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. As Olga mentioned, I'm an Afghan Canadian, and I would like to first introduce Afghanistan differently, as Afghans see it, different from what you see in media. So Afghanistan is located in the Central Asia, and it has a population of close to 39 million, and it's very diverse in terms of ethnic groups. And the population is very young, that of based on the World Bank information, 42%, over 42% of the population is under the age of 15, and that reflects in the population of refugees that are going to be resettled to Canada. Next. So this is how Afghans see their country versus in the eyes of media, it's mainly guns, blasts, war, gunmen, but this is a country with beautiful landscape, with towering mountains, forests and green areas, urban life, city life, and with 4 seasons. Next. Afghanistan historically was a center of science and education, and some very famous world-known scholars are born in this territory, and that's Rumi, as well as Avicenna, who is known as the father of medicine. Afghanistan is called by some people as graveyard of empires because it never was completely conquered by anyone, but it was always attacked by big empires. But in the eyes of Afghans, it's a graveyard of resources. It's rich and it has untapped reserves. And based on the US Department of State, it is the Saudi Arabia of lithium, which is used in electronics. And it has very, like mountains of the expensive stones, like azure, emerald, gold, silver, and so on. Next. So what happened in Afghanistan, in August, there was a power takeover by Taliban, and they assumed a total control of the country in August of this year. And that has changed everything in Afghanistan, and that has replaced millions of people. And since Canada was also involved, and we have a large Afghan community that is settled in Canada, and based on Afghan culture, there is a difference between what we call a family in Afghan culture and that of Canadian context. So to us, family is not only like brothers, sisters, wife, children, husband, and parents, but also uncles, aunties, their families, nieces, nephews, and that becomes a village. So every Afghan Canadian has a family member in Afghanistan. Next. As you know, Canada had official military presence in Afghanistan, and because of that, there are many Afghans who work directly with the Canadian government as well as Canadian NGOs. And the Canadian government has committed to bring 40,000 Afghan refugees to Canada. And they have identified some at-risk groups, which includes like women, girls, LGBTQIA+ community, as well as ethnic minorities and religious minorities. So far, the resettlement has happened only for 3,385 people since August. And that includes in BC 390 individuals in 110 family units. 51% of them are female, 49 male, and 0 to 4 years old includes like 66% of that, the refugees, and between ages of 5 to 18 are 155, which is 39% of them. And the working class, which is 19 to 64, includes 44%. Alexandra, over to you.
So we just saw the term GAR, and what does that mean? Well, it means government-assisted refugees. And it's important to recognize that refugees can come to Canada in 4 key ways. The first, as government-assisted refugees, where they receive federal money from the federal government, which supports them for their first year in Canada. The second way is a mix. It's a blended visa office referred cases. And this is a mix between Canadian citizens who are sponsoring individuals for 6 months, and then 6 months that are fully funded by the federal government. Finally, there's the private sponsorship, which is a full year that is of financial and emotional support that is provided by Canadian citizens. This is what sets Canada apart. Canada's private sponsorship of refugee program for many years was the only of its kind in the entire world. And during the Syrian crisis, we set ourselves apart as leaders globally. And since then, other countries have begun copying our program. So we have very own representatives at Mosaic who are part of global community, global shapers that are teaching people in New Zealand and in England and in Argentina how a private sponsorship of refugee program may work for folks in different countries. So this is really a program to be very proud of. And finally, we have the refugee claimant program. This is people who come to Canada not as refugees, but make refugee claims once they're here. Today, we're going to be primarily focusing on the private sponsorship of refugee program. So what is Mosaic doing? Well, as this pain is unfolding and this tragedy has been unfolding, we've been walking alongside the Afghan and wider Canadian community to provide meaningful refugee resettlement and integration support. So we have been offering knowledge sharing sessions. We have been offering emotional support to our friends and our family members and our colleagues from the Afghan community. And we've been working to inform members of the wider community about opportunities for private sponsorship. We really see the life-changing power of resettlement And we want to make sure that as Afghan refugees begin arriving in Canada, that we can provide wraparound quality support that both the refugees themselves and the groups of private sponsors feel confident, assured, and in a positive direction moving forward to their futures. As Olga mentioned, we are so proud to be leading Western Canada's largest private refugee sponsorship programs, which is our Afghan resettlement project. When we look at the 40,000 refugees that Canada has committed to sponsoring from Afghanistan, it's important to realize that the vast majority of these people will be brought here through the private sponsorship of refugee program. And the PSRP, or the Private Sponsorship of Refugee Program, allows Canadians and permanent residents to work with organizations such as Mosaic to sponsor and resettle people who qualify as refugees. When we're talking about community groups, these Canadians and permanent residents, we're talking about people like you. This is an opportunity for us as individuals to step forward, to join sponsorship groups, and to support the resettlement of refugees. So we're not talking about an abstract idea, but rather a true opportunity for engagement and changing lives. So we will be sponsoring as many refugees as possible to Canada from Afghanistan over the next period of 3 to 4 years. What does this look like? Well, we opened an online registration the moment that the Afghan crisis began really going into turmoil. And we allowed people here who have strong ties with family members or close friends in Afghanistan to register and to say, hey, we need to bring these people to Canada. If they met the requirements, they were able to apply. We received hundreds of requests. And of these cases, 908 have been determined as eligible cases for resettlement. We're not talking about 908 people, no. These 908 cases include 3,636 individuals. That's 1,589 adults and 2,047 children. These are all individual lives that we're hoping to bring to Canada and provide positive opportunities for their future. This is going to be unfolding over the next 3 to 4 years, and this is a very ambitious effort that is the largest in Western Canada. So how much does this cost? Well, for an individual, it costs about $17,000 for 12 months in Canada. And you can see that this amount increases for every additional member of the family. You can see that these are not significant amounts of money when you consider the cost of living here in the Lower Mainland, in areas like Burnaby, Coquitlam, and in the Tri-Cities area, not to mention in Vancouver itself. So $17,000 is intended to cover the cost of rent, furniture, and all living expenses. Is this possible? You bet it is. It's challenging, but it's possible. And we're working with members of the community like you to fundraise, as well as people who are actually part of their sponsorship groups, to raise the necessary funds to support people and bring them here. This is an ambitious goal. What can you do to support today? Well, you could help us to raise funds, or you could talk to us further about participating in a private sponsorship team. This is really what we're focusing on right now. For the second piece, what can we do later? Well, we're working to prepare accommodations as people arrive. There'll be welcome teams and individuals that are providing Canada Life support, as well as employment mentorship and meaningful employment opportunities, as well as language support. So before we move forward, I want to share a quick story, which is thinking back to the time when we were welcoming Syrian refugees to Canada. I had the pleasure of welcoming hundreds of individuals to the country, and one family stays in my mind in particular. We went to a hotel after picking them up at the airport. They were completely exhausted and overwhelmed at their new life in Canada. As I described how the room would work and what the family could expect for the next 2 months, the mother said, "Oh, where did my daughter go?" And we took a look around the room. And in the middle of March, their daughter had rolled up in my down-filled jacket and fallen asleep. And the mom looked at her daughter and she looked at me and she just teared up and said, "Peace. We're finally here experiencing peace." And though this is a different country, this is the ultimate goal. We want people to feel comforted, safe, and experiencing lives of peace in Canada, that they can contribute, they can fulfill their dreams and ambitions, and we can move forward together, enriching our community. So as we begin talking about tangible ways that you could support employment of refugees once they're arrived, I'd like to pass it back to you, Zarguna.
Thank you, Alexandra. If you can go to the next slide. So one of the reasons that we want to talk to you is because we will be looking at the settlement and integration of the refugee population after their arrival. And one of the things you can do is to hire refugees. And we are sharing here the ways that your companies may benefit from hiring refugees. And Olga may say about hiring refugees and Mosaic and say how diverse Mosaic is as an organization. And we learn so much from each other because it's a very diverse, multicultural organization. We adapt different ways because we learn from each other. So first of all, diversification of your workforce. And the Afghan refugees that are arriving, majority were educated in the Western universities. They are high skilled. And we also have people who are coming, who work with as I said, with the Canadian NGOs and Canadian government. So they are familiar with the Canadian system. But then we have also refugees that are coming as family members. And they may not be that familiar with either speaking the language or knowing the system. Diversifying your workforce, access to skilled and qualified candidates, increase your employees' communication and empathy, and keep roles filled by skilled and ideal candidates. Decrease unconscious employee bias. This is all positive culture that can be implemented or brought to your companies by hiring people of the refugee background and who are coming from diverse cultural backgrounds. Next. Alexandra, over to you.
So as you can see, we're very excited to welcome our dear friend and partner, Malik Zada. Malik is, as Olga mentioned, a community leader who owns a restaurant, a very successful restaurant in Coquitlam. Malik arrived here as a refugee, and he's been actively supporting the private sponsorship of several family members. We had the pleasure of witnessing a family member arrive just 2 weeks ago at the airport. So Malik really is a prime example of somebody who's come to Canada and provided his heart while he's pursued his dreams and ambitions to give back to the community. I'm so proud to call him a friend and a colleague and a partner of Mosaic. Malik, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Really appreciate it. And just as a former refugee, as well as being involved with a private sponsorship program, to reflecting back in the life of refugees and helping refugees while we are here, it gives us immense happiness and peace. The private, first of all, we need to really thank Canada for the establishment of the system that allows citizens and permanent residents to participate in the private sponsorship program and bring refugees over here. And bringing refugees for us, and based on my articulation, is saving lives, bring them to safety and utilize their capacities or capabilities, and to after their fully integration in the society, they left to basically participate, give back, and so on and so forth. So refugees are our fellow human beings. They are same as us, and they are individuals who forced by situations to leave their own countries and flee to the safeties. Amongst the refugees, we have professionals, we have doctors, we have engineers, we have entrepreneurs, we have individuals from different walks of lives that the situations and back home or their homeland force them to be refugee, and they are looking for the brighter future. They are looking to utilize their capacity and educate their children in an environment or in a country like Canada. So having said that, going back to refugee sponsoring, of course, there is one scary point that the funding part of it. But this is not scary when we really look into that, dig into the deeper, and it's not scary. It's not overwhelmed. It is just some sort of funding that we provide for the refugees to come over here. And this is one, if we look at into it in a very clear way, it brings us happiness that we are trying to save the lives of individuals. As I said earlier, as a sponsor, private sponsorship, the receiving help from Mosaic, and it gives me some sort of happiness that reflecting back to the families or individuals who arrived in Canada, and they are integrating very well, and you see them happy. It gives you happiness, and it is one of the decisions that personally we made as a family to be participating in a sponsorship program, and reflecting back to my own life, when we arrived in Canada, we received immense help and guidance from Mosaic and from friends and families here to integrate faster in the Canadian society, and to do whatever we love to do. And essentially, we opened our own kitchen back in 2017 with the aim of not only serving our customers with quality food, but also be conscious of our surroundings, be conscious of our neighbors, to see what we can do to help them if there is people or community members who faces hardship in a particular time. So how can we basically make sure our door is open to help them? And therefore, we initiated a program that's called No Money, No Worries initiative that kept our door open. And this initiative basically welcomed by the communities, and community came forward to support us, to support this initiative. And after establishing or this program, so we basically looked into the challenges in the community, that what else the community, what other challenges community faces. COVID-19 kicked in and attacked our world, and we saw it as an area that how can our kitchen and ourselves can contribute to show our appreciations and thanks to frontline workers, to teachers, to and recognizing our valedictorians in the community, School District 43, as well as for those members of the community that they face very difficult time to make sure our resources are available to them as well. And recently, just I talked to Share CEO Claire and Valerie, the fund development. We initiated a ghost kitchen, which we call it a virtual kitchen. We put all of our pizza menu there, and we are committed to donate 100% of our profit for the month of November and December to Share Food Bank, which is exciting. And when we talked about this, and we really Claire and Valerie understood, and they mentioned that we sometimes as a human being we may see refugees and as a different pocket of our fellow human being, but contribution from refugees, the refugees who has the willingness to participate in the community, it comes to the point we become very speechless. And I think it's a great opportunity for us all as a business community, as an individual in the community, to look into the deeper into the private sponsorship program to see what we can do. For instance, my business and myself really love to do more if there are more opportunities, and partnering with different business in Tri-City as well as in Burnaby, that we are willing to participate if there is something that we can share our best practices with the wider business community. We are here to help. And yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Malik. We appreciate you coming and sharing a little bit of your story with us today. And we really hope that everybody here from the Burnaby Board of Trade and the Tri-Cities area are able to learn a little bit from what you have shared. Malik, you're a shining example of somebody who's shown up for the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'd like to leave it at that and offer opportunity for question, discussion. So thank you very much. We appreciate this opportunity to engage with you today.
Thanks, Alexandra and Zargun and Malik. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts there. I know we've got a few questions that came into the Q&A in the chat box. So those of you who are watching, if you had something that piqued your interest or you had a question, feel free to pop those in there. Maybe I can kind of help MC that part of it, and we can get feedback from you three and Olga, if you had anything to add as well. One person noted here just recently, I think I saw this at the beginning. If the registration for sponsoring has ended, what is the biggest things and the most important things that people and businesses can do now, since that part has come and gone? What's the next piece that they can do to help?
Thank you for this question. I think it brings up a very important point to communicate, which is registration for sponsorship has not ended. What has come to a close is registration for individuals who want to bring their family or their friends here. So it's the end of the registration for registering individuals that we will bring here. However, we will actively be recruiting individuals who can participate in fundraising and the sponsorship responsibilities. So we've effectively closed registration for those who will be sponsored, not those who will be supporting the sponsoring. This is going to be the whole next phase of this project. So that would be one of the key ways that you could support. First would be to support our fundraising efforts. We're very excited that beginning in 2 weeks' time, we'll have a public service announcement that's going to be launched across televisions across Canada that will be sharing a little bit about the power of resettlement and the opportunities to donate. So there's the chance to donate, which is easily done through the Mosaic website. In the Afghan landing page or donate now, there's a large button that you can easily donate, and even $100 goes directly towards the sponsorship of Afghan refugees in need. So one way is to join a sponsorship group, which you can find all of the information to join a sponsorship group on our website as well, under the Afghan Response page. The second is to donate. And the third would be, as we've mentioned, to consider ways that you may be able to support employment opportunities for newly arrived refugees. When we think about some of the challenges that employers may face, or some barriers that they may feel towards hiring newly arrived refugees, a few come to mind. And one would be cultural differences, linguistic challenges or differences, and also sometimes there's questions about work permits, or are they eligible to work, and what would that look like? And finally, their skill sets and certifications. So I'd like to speak briefly to those. The first point being linguistic challenges. So when we're considering linguistic barriers, one thing I will say is that all resettled refugees to Canada have access to attend our LINK classes, language instruction for newcomers to Canada. And this provides a very strong fundamental understanding of English and the language that they would need to get their foot into the workplace. There's also English conversation circles, which we can go a little bit deeper. For those who already have strong English skills, there's also opportunities for English classes that let them specialize a little bit deeper into areas that they would need for employment, such as engineering, or if they needed specific vocabulary skill sets for something like even being a taxi driver. So there's opportunities for training such as that. Culturally, people are very adaptable, and many refugees are so focused on integrating into the community. And our focus is always on integration, not assimilation. So when we're looking at integration, it means how can we coexist and build off the strengths of each other's with our different cultural backgrounds. And many newcomers to Canada feel a great strength in their ability to connect with members from their own community, but are hungry for connections with members from the wider Canadian community. So I think it's taking that leap of faith and saying, you're different than me, but how can we connect and find a common ground in this workplace? And being very clear about what a company's culture is, what employment expectations are. And organizations such as Mosaic are offering very high quality customized employment supports for refugees and for newcomers to Canada that really strongly equip them to understand what would be expected of them in an employment workplace here. So those are three key areas that we can keep in mind. And of course, as refugees arrive in Canada, as resettled refugees, they're permanent residents and they have all the rights to work in Canada. They don't encounter any challenges with work eligibility. And when it comes to certifications, there's many different avenues that newcomers can take when it comes to making sure that their credentials are recognized, upgrading or converting credentials to make sure that it's to a level that it needs to be. And what can be heartbreaking is the higher level of education or specialization a refugee may have in their country of origin, the more challenging it can be to convert those credentials here. I'd like to pass it to you, Zarguna, if you'd like to speak on that at all, of course, because you're leading many of the important Mosaic initiatives in this area.
Thank you, Alexandra. I think you mainly covered everything. It will be better for us to move to the other question.
Perfect. Thanks for that, and that's so good clarification on the sponsorship piece. And I think we'll be making sure that we put together a communication that goes out to all of our members. So maybe we can grab some of the details. I think Olga, I saw you posted something in the chat box. So we'll be in touch. Make sure we share all the information, links, donation buttons. I think there's some as you said, very easy ways that people can support, and then there may be more integrated ways people can be involved, and we want to share all that with our community. And that was one of the next questions was on the language, any language barriers, and from the business or employer's point of view. So, Alexander, you mentioned that, and we're quite familiar with the LINK programs here in Burnaby, and so that's all on the employee or the refugee side. Are there supports for employers to make sure that they have any kind of best practices or things that they should know about when they're bringing on someone who's from a refugee background? Or are you suggesting that through the LINK programs and what the work you're doing, that language shouldn't really be seen as a barrier?
Zarguna, feel free to speak to this. Like, I know that I'm really hogging the microphone space here. Of course, Olga as well. But there's certainly, I'm not insinuating that Link would totally clarify and resolve all of the language challenges of a newcomer refugee. But the customized employment supports that we do offer would help direct the newcomer to develop their English skills for the specific profession that they're pursuing. And there are a lot of very integrated and nuanced programs that are available through Mosaic and many of our partner agencies. I'm not sure, Olga or Zarguna, if you'd like to speak more to that.
I'll speak a bit about the cultural aspect for newcomer Afghans. In our culture, praising yourself is really not appreciated. So, and that will be something that will require some integration skills. I mean, after integration, they may be able to talk about their own skills, because culturally it's not something that's viewed well when people talk very highly about themselves. But in reality, they may have those skills but not talk about them in a very not glorify their skills. So that's something that could be considered. But generally, as Alexandra said, Mosaic and other settlement organizations, employment programs are working with newcomers to familiarize them with orient them about the employment, how they can access employment, and how they should navigate the system, the job market, and how to hold a position and get the position. So that those are the areas that the settlement organizations are working with newcomers.
And if I can add one more thing, this is on the side of employers. Again, Mosaic has a team, a large team of providing employment services, but also engaging employers. So I would like to encourage you, if you are considering wonderful hiring refugees, please reach out. We'll connect you with one of our employer engagement specialists who can work with you about how to structure those supports, because every organization is different. This is not the first group of refugees we are welcoming. Mosaic has been supporting refugees over the years, and we've done and worked with different organizations on different models and supports that we could put in place for that particular environment. So please, if you're serious, reach out. We can put you in touch with the right people to structure the supports that you need.
Thanks for that offer, Olga. I think that'll be exactly what we'll want to share with all of our members, is that those resources that exist. Because I'm optimistic that, because the number one issue that we hear from businesses is labor challenges, and I think businesses are really keen to find workers. So I'm optimistic that there might be a lot of synergy here, that if we can connect and collaborate and get everyone on the same page, that hopefully we can find these opportunities for those people who are coming into our communities here. Just looking at the other questions that came in here, I guess one was a couple of housekeeping questions, which was on timing. We had a question here around what's the time frame we're talking about? Are the 40,000 or there, you mentioned almost a 3,400 number? Are those kind of coming in waves, or is there a landing date that we're expecting kind of the bulk of people to arrive? What's the time frame we're talking about?
This is the million-dollar question. And one thing that we'll recognize is, though the government has committed to the 40,000 refugees being brought to Canada, they did not indicate a specific time frame. However, as I've mentioned, we're hoping and we're working towards the goal of sponsoring the individuals we've indicated within the next 3 to 4 years. So as we submit a sponsorship package to Immigrants and Refugee Citizenship Canada, IRCC Canada, it does take a while for this case to process. Refugees go through a vigorous level of privacy, security screening, health screenings, and the like before they're able to be approved and then brought to Canada. So we're hoping to begin welcoming individuals within the next year, and then we'll continue trickling in over the next 3 years. So it's not going to be necessarily, as some tend to use water metaphors with refugees, a wave of refugees arriving at once, but rather it's going to be a constant, steady flow over the next 3 to 4 years. With that said, we are so excited to be welcoming through our other refugee resettlement programs, many refugees. We've recently leased a house in Port Coquitlam, which we've been actively renovating and learning a lot about renovations over the past few weeks. And folks will begin arriving within the next 10 days. So this will be, to begin, 10 individuals, some of whom are from Afghanistan and some are from other countries. And we look forward to strengthening our ties in the Tri-City area as we begin welcoming them there. When we speak with Iris Challoner, our manager of private sponsorship, she says that anytime she has resettled a refugee into Coquitlam or Port Coquitlam, the outcomes have been remarkable and the individual never wants to leave that community. So we're so grateful for our partnership with the Mayor of Coquitlam and for other individuals in the community who make it so welcoming and warm beyond the superficial, but into opportunities for employment, welcoming into the school district, and so on and so forth. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexandra. I should say Burnaby is also home for Afghan refugees. If you go over Edmund Street, you will see a number of Afghan restaurants and Afghan businesses. And I was living in, since arriving to Canada, I lived for 14 years in Burnaby. And that was the city that I resettled, integrated into the Canadian, learned English. Everything was done in Burnaby. Thank you.
And I think that those are great comments. Thanks for that. Because I think Burnaby and the Tri-Cities. I've lived in the Tri-Cities for a number of years. They're great communities, and hopefully this can be an opportunity to kind of galvanize attention to this. But Alexandra, I picked up on your point there about, and this was another question that came in, that this is one group of refugees that we're talking about right now. That doesn't mean that that's the whole pot of people who are coming to Canada. So there was a question here about the 33 or 3,400 that you had mentioned. Is that out of that 40,000 total, or and what part of that represents what's coming to our communities? And then beyond this, I know obviously we're all galvanized and focused on the Afghan crisis, but what maybe as we kind of wrap up here, in the broader context, what's Mosaic doing in this space when we're not dealing with this type of crisis in a regular year or kind of throughout the year?
I think that's a funny term, in a regular year. I don't even remember what a regular year feels like anymore with COVID and everything. But this is a really great question. When we look at the 3,000 something number that we brought up earlier, these are individuals who are being brought to Canada because they've been indicated as particularly vulnerable within the special program that the federal government of Canada created in the onset of the most recent Afghan crisis. So those individuals have been recognized and gone through a refugee status determination process with the UN Refugee Agency, were recognized and picked up by the Canadian government and our partners in the US and other countries, and then have been evacuated or resettled from a secondary country to Canada. Those are who we're talking about from that population, that demographic. The rest, it's constantly evolving, but we know that when we build on past experiences, that the highest number of, the highest percentage of refugees through this initiative will be brought through private sponsorship. So that is something that we confidently know, and it will be tens of thousands of individuals brought through the private sponsorship of refugee programs. When we look at people from different backgrounds, Mosaic works with people regardless of country of origin, sexual orientation, religious background, and the like. And we welcome refugees from all different countries. Our programming has definitely not been limited to individuals from Afghanistan, but we've supported not only folks from Syria, we're working regularly with resettled refugees from Ethiopia, Eritrea, folks from Sudan, Syria, Iraq. We have many Kurdish clients. So we work with a very diverse group of individuals. And also, if you remember, the fourth category was refugee claimants. So we welcome, Mosaic is one of the largest providers of refugee claimant services in Western Canada, also known as asylum seekers or people making refugee claims here in the country. And we welcome, in that case, many people from Central America. So the vast majority being from Mexico, Venezuela, Honduras, and countries that are in crisis in Central and South America. So it makes sense, right? People would be coming up and crossing the border into Canada. So we work with a variety of different people, groups, and both resettled refugees and asylum seekers or refugee claimants. And in an average year, we're working with approximately, us and our partners, nearly 2,000 refugee claimants or asylum seekers, supporting individuals to get into schools, find employment, mental health support, and then just integrating and becoming part of the community with platforms to give back here in Vancouver, Burnaby, New West, and the like. So in a typical year, we're welcoming hundreds of resettled refugees, thousands of refugee claimants, and providing meaningful resources through our youth programs, our innovative programs that Zarguna leads, as well as our child and youth programs and our settlement workers in schools. The list goes on. We work with seniors down to babies, and all of that information can be found on our website. I'm not sure if there's anything to add to that, Zarguna or Olga.
I think we should talk about our specialized programs. So every category of people have a specialized program in Mosaic, and that also includes violence prevention programs for men, women, and men programming are something that is a huge gap in the community. So we do provide service to multicultural men and also a specialized seniors program for multicultural seniors. And we have a very nice choir of multicultural seniors singing, dancing. So if you have any events, you feel free to invite them. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that background, a bit more of the breadth of what Mosaic does. I wanted to make sure that we included that. I think I've captured the questions that had all been typed into the Q&A and the chat. So this is kind of your last call for getting anything in the chat box there. I did want to take a moment here to thank everyone who's on the call, both those of you who are here live. I know we always have many more people who watch these in the recorded format. And Olga and your team, thanks so much for being here and sharing your expertise. And we'll be in touch for sure to put together some resources. Again, if you're watching this on a recording, make sure you touch base with either the Burnaby Board of Trade or the Tri-Cities Chamber, and I'm sure we'll be able to connect you with some of the resources that Mosaic have been talking about here and how you can get involved in supporting the efforts around the Afghan refugee crisis. So I don't see anything else popping in here into the chat box. So again, on behalf of the Burnaby Board of Trade and our partners at the Tri-Cities Chamber, I want to thank all of you for sharing your thoughts and experiences and insights into this topic today. And we're looking forward to hopefully being able to work with the business community and your settlement agency and the refugee community to make sure that this is as successful and smooth a transition as possible for everyone. So great. Thanks everyone for being here and enjoy the rest of your day.